recording live in Seattle, Washington every Thursday at 1 p.m.
Good afternoon, Seattle. Welcome to Afternoons with Monique on Rainier Avenue Radio. I'm Monique Lee, your host. Today, I have the pleasure of having two accomplished financial professionals joining me on Afternoons with Monique. My first guest, Seth Rudin, is a mergers and acquisitions broker from he has 25 years in business and have several startups. He's been a long-term entrepreneur in the community and has a strong financial business background, negotiation skills, and acumen. And he had successfully assist sellers navigate the sale of their largest retirement asset, their business. He has an MBA from Baylor University and a BS in accounting from Arizona State University. The second guest that will be joining him and I on the show is Addie Roberg, who is currently a senior vice president at Live Oak Bank. And she specializes in stock purchases and mergers, partner buyouts, owner-occupied real estate, and ground-up construction, with extensive experience in SBA lending experience. Please welcome to Afternoons with Monique, Seth Rudin, and Addie Roberg. Hi, guys. Good afternoons. Okay, Seth, you might want to take off your mute button.
Hi there. Good afternoon. Sorry about that.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining me on Afternoons with Monique today. Seth, I've known you for at least, 7 years, right?
Yes.
From the day you were competing with Uber for that startup, what is it called?
Aster. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and it's been quite a few years, and you sold that business, and now you're in mergers and acquisitions. So let's start off with a little bit of history. Let me start with Seth first. Can you introduce, both of you actually after Seth? Addie, you're welcome to join and introduce yourself to our audience. A short introduction of who you are and where you're from, and a little background.
Sure, no problem. Thank you very much. Very honored to be on your show. I'm Seth Rudin. I live locally and work locally in Bellevue, Washington. I did grow up in Phoenix, and I went to school at Arizona State. And my wife and I traveled the world a little bit. Lived in Texas, Singapore, and we made our way to Washington. And I've been in finance and sales, and I did start a startup called Asterride, Asterride. It's a global car service, still in business today. And through that, we sold it 5 years later. And I met Monique on different entrepreneurial trails. And I sold it, and I aligned myself with a business broker. And I was fascinated by it. It was very stressful selling your own business. But at the end of the day, we sold it, and I got involved in business brokerage, and I've enjoyed every day since of it. I think it does help when I'm talking with my clients who are sellers and owners of a firm that I understand their feelings and emotions, plus obviously the business aspects of the sale. I work for a company. It's locally owned. It's headquartered in Bellevue. It's called IBA, or International Business Associates. We've been in business since 1975. We work on the sell side of mergers and acquisitions. So we advise clients on the sale. We do the evaluation. We act as their professional negotiator, and we're their intermediary through the entire sale. And we get to work with great partners like Addie at Live Oak. And so I'll stop there for my introduction, and maybe Addie can introduce herself.
Great.
Hi, Addie.
Hi, Monique. Nice to meet you.
Likewise.
Appreciate it. Addie Roberg, sitting here in Snohomish, Washington. Born and raised Pacific Northwest. Went to Stanwood High School. Went to the Evergreen State College. Come from a background of blue-collar, hard workers. My grandfather Used to have a general store in the bottom of the Smith Tower. My father, still working at 72, pushing a wheelbarrow.
Nice.
I always, just appreciated the hard work and seeing what they did day in and day out, raising family and, working 9 to 5, 7 days a week and, in the evenings and nights and weekends and what have you. But I also knew that I didn't want to be working that hard. I wanted to work smarter. So I ended up getting into business school, ended up going into banking, which kind of happened naturally for me. I've been in banking for 20 years now, which is hard to believe. I gravitated toward SBA lending, small business lending, because of where I came from. Really enjoy what I do, leveraging the SBA program to help, create jobs, bolster the economy. So it's a pretty fun niche within the lending space. At Live Oak Bank, so Live Oak is an interesting bank. I come from an area of community lending. Live Oak is a little bit different. Live Oak was founded before the start of the Great Recession. It emerged out of a rubble of 2008 as the first bank to keep the customer at the center of the business model. We put a groundbreaking spin on what banking could be, focused on service and technology to redefine banking. So we are a digital bank servicing small businesses across the country. So it's a tech bank located in Wilmington, North Carolina. As I mentioned, I'm here in Snohomish, Washington. So I'm here, boots on the ground. What we do really well is we do SBA really well. We were the #1 SBA lender in the United States last year. We have a lot of really, really smart people that use technology very well, and we have a ton of resources to get out to our clients so that they're really well equipped to buy businesses and transition those companies well and ensure that that transition goes smoothly and that they can grow and be prepared for the things that come their way. So I'm excited to be here and to talk with you, Monique and Seth, and see what we can get out to our local business community today.
Absolutely. I've never had an M&A broker and lender on my show, so this will be the first to explore this interesting world of small business financing and purchasing, mergers and acquisition. Now, I have a background in finance, so I kind of know a little bit about this world, but as far as the day-to-day and some of the nuances, I'm not as familiar. So hopefully I'll get a chance to ask some questions and educate myself and the audience about what you guys do. So first, Seth, tell us about what it's like to be a business broker or a merger and acquisition advisor. What do you do?
Well, it's fun day, no day is the same. We represent the sellers typically in the merger side. So we advise privately held and family-owned companies or owners on the sale of their business. We can act as consultants and help them prepare them for the sale. Most of our efforts is around the sale, though. So we come up with a valuation. We sit down and work with them when they're going through their financials, and then we agree and we market it to a buyer out in the market. We have a buyer database, or we leverage internet, our network, or other fellow business brokers. And then we help negotiate the offers, get the most money for our sellers. It is usually their largest asset, and they're looking to retire typically or exit. And we work with bankers, obviously, like Addie, who help us close deals. We work with lawyers to help get the purchase sale agreement done. We work with landlords. We're all commercial real estate brokers, so we can handle both the business as well as the property, if it's going to be sold with it, or if they're going to sign a lease and need to have it assigned, in the transition of the sale. And then we follow that all the way through to the end of the transaction where they get paid and they do a transition of services.
I almost feel like I need a chart, like 1, 2, 3, all the things that you do on the list of, because this is a complex process, from valuation to finding buyer to negotiating the price of the sale to finding lenders. It's meticulously must be handled by someone who knows what he's doing clearly. So I'm curious about the valuation part, since we have an hour here, so we can really get into the nitty-gritty details of finance a little bit, just to educate our audience and myself on your process, if I may. I understand maybe you have to do the valuation yourself, or do you hire out to another financial person? You have an MBA, so you know how to do some of this, but do you have another person, or do you yourself evaluate and handle all of these process A to Z for your clients?
We do everything A to Z. Sometimes we're hired to do the valuation, and that's all we do, or we obviously do, the majority is do the valuation and then sell the business. We do it all in-house. We have our own in-house models. It's not magic science. It's the nuances are how do you understand how that model applies to that given business that you're evaluating. Discounted cash flows is certainly a category. They have what's called market comparables. So you look at previous sales that are out there for a matching business, matching industry, near the same time of sale. It can be very nuanced and challenging, because a lot of times somebody may be selling because they have cancer. They're selling at the top of their business, or they had an 8-year itch. They had a good broker, or they didn't have a good broker. You just never know. There's also multiples. So we take a look at their revenue and their adjusted cash flows, and we add a multiple, account for their assets and some other things to come up with a valuation. We then try to triangulate all that together and to agree to a price that we are confident that we can sell.
Interesting. And how many comparables do you typically come up with to compare with the business that you represent?
It always varies on the business and the availability. You might be dealing with one of the island properties that don't have a lot of comps, or you could be dealing with some that sells a lot in downtown Seattle that has a lot of comps. So just whatever is best available at that time, we try to get.
And is there a specialty or a type of business that you handle or tend to handle so far, or are you open to all kinds?
We're open to all kinds, typically profitable businesses that span across industries, manufacturing, industrial, construction, laundromat, retail, cannabis is now a big one. We have professional services. We've sold real estate, companies. So those are the typical ones. Sometimes we have some unique ones too.
I see. And how active is the M&A market and lending is at this point?
Sure. And Addie, feel free to comment on any of my answers too. From my side, it's still a very active market. Companies still want to sell, and buyers are still looking. I haven't seen a change, even with the rise in interest rates. 6% or 7% may seem high to folks because we've been spoiled at 3%. It really isn't that bad in the grand scheme of things compared to what people were paying in the 80s. And so there's still high activity.
So let me understand this correctly. So after the evaluation and you find a buyer, you go to someone like Addie for the buyer to process the qualify the buyer of the business, and they would borrow from you, Addie, right? From someone like Live Oak Bank to loan them the money. Am I right? And typically,
correct. They might have an all cash buyer, but that's not very often that someone wants to give all your cash at the same time. So they definitely will get a loan, and we'll engage somebody, like you said, Addie, one of our partners who've helped IBA close a lot of deals. So we're happy to work with them.
And so the interest rate that you're saying is right now to borrow for businesses is 6%, but before it was like 3%, similar to lending to a purchase of real estate.
It's a little bit higher. I'm using round numbers. But.
I see.
Yeah, and actually what I would say to that is, looking at the 60-year average of the Wall Street Journal prime rate, which is kind of the base rate which banks use to lend um, on commercial loans, the average is 7%. And so right now that rate, because of the Fed's attempt to combat inflation, is they're increasing that rate. So it was 3.25% for a very long time, which was exceptionally low.
Right.
And I think a lot of us got so accustomed to that very low rate. Now it's at 5.5%. The Fed was so used to increasing it when it would do it based on 0.25% here and there. Now we're looking at discussions. If you listen to Swalk on the Street, which I listen to often, they're prepping everybody for 0.75% here coming up in August. Likely to happen, I would say. We'll see what happens. But yeah, so the average prime rate was 7%, and that's the base. And then there'd be a spread over that. The spread based on SBA loans, and SBA loans are commonly used to finance a business acquisition. The reason why is that, so the SBA, it's a federal loan program. It's a self-funding program that basically with a collection of the fees through the loans that are made, there's fees that are paid by the people that borrow the money. It's a self-funding program because of that. There's a guarantee that's offered, and it helps mitigate a collateral shortfall mainly to the bank. And so with that, the bank is able to provide and extend credit to businesses that can't obtain credit on normal terms.
I have a question, if I may interject. Yeah. So SBA stands for Small Business Administration. So these are loans that were made by this administration. And you talked about self-funding. What does that mean?
Yeah, good question. Self-funding. So on these loans that are provided, so these are loans that are provided on behalf of the SBA through banks. So the bank provides the loan. It's guaranteed by the federal government. These loans go up to $5 million. The average loan is about $750,000. The guarantee fee, this is the fee that the borrower pays. The borrower pays a guarantee fee up to 3.5% of the guaranteed portion.
Right.
This fee is then paid to the SBA, and that's the portion that funds the program. That's the self-funding portion of the program.
I see.
So with the collection of those fees, it helps fund the program.
Very good.
It helps cover the losses that are incurred.
And these loans, as low a rate as they seem to be comparable to residential lending for good put borrowers, with high credit rating. So I'm just curious. Do you know what the rate of default on these loans?
It's a great question. I know that right now at Live Oak we're below 1%. I believe on average it's below 2%, and I'm pretty sure it's lower than that. I would say though on the rate side, so kind of just generally speaking, mortgage rates on residential mortgages on your primary residence tend to be on the lower scale. And then you get to investment properties, like, you have your rental house or you have your vacation home. Those tend to be a little bit higher. And then you have your commercial real estate. So your, you have a business and your business occupies that real estate.
Sure.
That tends to be a pretty decent rate as well.
Yeah.
The reason why those tend to be pretty good rates, the home mortgage and the real estate that's occupied by the business, is because you have the individual that lives there and has the income to support
tangible.
Pretty steady,
Yeah.
It's low risk.
Yes.
Especially with the business side too. You have the business that occupies the real estate. You have the consistent cash flow. It's a low risk investment.
There's a collateral behind the investment or the loan that
Exactly.
you lend out.
Whereas with a business acquisition, let's say, you have a transaction where you have an existing business that's being purchased. That what's being sold is blue sky, cash flow, the name, the phone number, the website, the customer list.
So you tangible assets.
Yeah, you have fixed assets. You have likely receivables. So you do have some tangible assets, but there's a big old, kind of like blank part on the collateral side that has no value to a bank.
Yeah.
And that's where the SBA guarantee comes into play.
Huh.
That guarantee helps mitigate that shortfall.
It's sort of like an insurance, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
But the thing is, it's still riskier. And so because of that, the risk profile is higher. So the rates tend to be higher than if it was a real estate transaction.
I see. That's a good breakdown so that the average consumer who is only familiar with real estate purchases of their home can have a point of reference where, if they want to open a small business, what they could be looking at. Because, for years I was thinking, lending to business, there must be a lot of, a high interest rate, 10, 11%. But, from what you shared right now, it's very comparable to borrowing to buy a home. So that is great news for small entrepreneurs who are looking to start or borrow to grow their business. So that's a really good breakdown to understand. Now,
and just one other note, if you don't mind me saying, that on the rate topic, most often these type of rates are quarterly adjustment. So they do adjust on a quarterly basis.
I see.
They also can be fixed rates. So you can get a fixed rate. What I would say on that note is that we are in a period right now where rates are increasing. And so I would be cautious to lock a rate right now on a SBA loan or on a conventional loan, because I would be willing to bet, and again, you could pay me a lot of money to bet on something like that, but I'd be willing to bet rates will be coming down in the next couple of years.
So just for a point of reference, an example, if they were to do something like an ARM, an adjustable rate, and versus a fixed rate, what would be, which one would be lower and by how much?
Yeah, so the shorter the fix, the lower the rate.
Okay.
And so today, if we were to do a business acquisition, the prime rate is at 5.5. So that's the base rate. And then we charge a spread over that.
Yeah.
So maybe today the rate would be 7 on a quarterly basis. But maybe it would be 7.5 to 8 on like a 3 or a 5 year.
I see. What about fixed? What would that be like? Like, is that around 6, like said earlier, 6 and then some?
If you had real estate, we could potentially fix it longer for maybe something like 10 years. But it's not very often that you would get a loan that is fixed for the entire term of the loan if it was an SBA loan.
Interesting.
It's usually a shorter fix on it.
3 to 5 years.
Yeah, that's good to know. We're touching on the fixed and variable rates. So these are both available from your bank. Am I right?
That's correct.
Okay. Any tip to ensure buyers? Actually, this question is to Seth. Any tips to ensure buyers are successful at applying for their business loans?
Actually, I think this is better for Addie.
Okay. So Addie, why don't you ask this question? Sorry about that.
That's my fault.
That's okay. No, I think this is really just being prepared. and getting the right people in your corner. Making sure that as a buyer, because that's essentially who we are working with, who the bank is working with, making sure that you have a trusted CPA and a good attorney that is familiar with this transactional type of work is really going to get you positioned to get the project off on the right note. Exploring different financing options, whether it's SBA financing, conventional financing, seller financing, or line of credit. There are a bunch of different options that are available, and talking to the right lenders and making sure that you have the right people in your corner will help make sure that you get off on that right note. Determining the right structure for the deal. And this is all part of the negotiation. And once you get on the track of negotiation, everybody gets their mind set on a certain thing. So, once you say, okay, I want $1 million for this business, that seller is going to think, okay, I'm going to get $1 million for it. And then once you start going down that line, if that number starts changing, people start getting a little squirmy, and they people don't like that.
Right.
And so you just want to make sure that once you start setting numbers and expectations, that everybody's going to be on the same page.
Usually that's done, the business broker will do most of the stuff. She handled it very well. Like, she's been in my job. She'd be really good at it. And then the financing part, right? The having your papers, documents, and a clean credit, having plenty of cash and plan is really, really solid, and making sure the timeline's realistic, so you don't have a bank taking longer than you think it's going to occur.
What kind of collateral is being considered as good collateral from the bank's point of view, if I may ask? And we have 2 minutes into our break. So you got 2 minutes to answer this, and we're going to go on break at 2:30.
Personal guarantee is absolutely on the table. And that's a signature I promise to pay for anybody that owns 20% or more of the company. And then all business assets from the business that's being sold. And then with respect to those individuals that own 20% or more of the company, do they have equity in their homes? And this can be a very big topic. And this is why it's always good to work with lenders that know the SBA program very well. And lenders that are PLP, that's an acronym for preferred lenders, making sure that they have that designation. But essentially, if you're getting an SBA loan, just know that as a borrower, you're all in. You're going to be signing that personal guarantee, and if you have equity in your home, that will likely be offered as collateral on the loan as well.
Well, I appreciate that answer, and we are going to go on break now for the next 3 minutes. When we come back, we'll talk about Live Oak Bank rating and the kind of loans that they loan out, also to explore more merger and acquisition process with Seth Rudin from IBA. We'll be right back.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time. And when I'm not translating the lyrics of Boogie Oogie Oogie for bored Europeans, I'm listening to RainierAvenueRadio.world.
You probably have questions about COVID vaccines. Here are some answers about how they're being made.
How are COVID vaccines being produced faster?
Usually, vaccine testing and production are separate steps. But because of the pandemic, vaccines are being developed on parallel tracks. So both steps are happening just at the same time.
How are the vaccines being tested?
Right now, several different COVID vaccines are in testing. Each go through multiple clinical trials with up to thousands of volunteers.
How do vaccines get approved?
Not all COVID vaccine versions will make it to the final stages of testing and approval. Produced vaccines that do not pass clinical trials will be destroyed. But for those that do pass, a team of medical experts will examine test results and possible side effects. If the vaccine is effective and safe, it gets approved and gets to you. Go to covidvaccinewa.org to learn more. A message from the state of Washington.
Join Rainier Avenue Radio from 5 to midnight for Sunday evening sound sessions. Jazz from the cabinets from Big Poppy.
That's right. It's time once again for Jazz from the Cabinets with Big Poppy.
Sergio LaCour's Love Line.
It's Sergio's Love Line with Sergio LaCour. Going to the phone line. Tell her who we talking to.
Sage Prince and Just My Opinion.
This is Sage, and that's just about going to do it for the first half of Just My Opinion.
K-Fox Nightbeat with Nasty Ness Rodriguez.
The beat of the Fox. K-Fox Nightbeat, Nasty Ness.
You know what? You're going to listen from 5 to midnight. Just turn it on and don't stop. DJ Alibaba. The Underground Surround Sound Star Time with Paul Pearson.
Thanks for tuning in. My name is Paul Pearson.
Sunday evening sound
Star
sessions on Rainier Avenue Radio. Trust me, you'll be listening the entire time from 5 to midnight. Sunday evening, your sound session on Rainier Avenue Radio.
My name is Keith. I'm a barber from Tacoma, Washington. When the pandemic hit, it did affect me as a business owner. I had my own personal reasons why I didn't get vaccinated. But I was talking to a doctor and he was telling me more about what it could do to protect us and our family. I wanted to get back to that once was, right? I do feel safe knowing that I am vaccinated. I just hope what I'm saying is reaching into people's heads to know that this is the best decision for all of us. To learn more, please visit hereforuswa.org.
Rainier Avenue Radio. You can get your sunshine, provide you more information. Rainier Avenue Radio.
Welcome to Rainier Avenue Radio. This is Afternoons with Monique, recording live in Seattle, Washington, every Thursday at 1 p.m.
Welcome back to Afternoons with Monique. You're on Rainier Avenue Radio. Today, I have two guests from the financial field, mergers and acquisitions. Seth Rudin from International Business Associates and Addie Roberg from Live Oak Bank, joining me to share with us their expertise on merger and acquisitions and lending to buy and sell small businesses. Please welcome back to Afternoons with Monique, Seth Rudin, and Addie Roberg. I'm sorry, Addie, I mispronounced your name earlier as Roberg, but it's Roberg, right?
That's okay. Happens all the time.
All right. So Seth has 25 years in as an entrepreneur in business, and he had also hold an MBA from Baylor University and a BS in accounting from Arizona State University. So let's talk more. My next question is for Seth. Who is the typical buyer of a business that you represent? Seth, you have to take yourself off mute.
Thank you. I did that at break. The typical buyer can fit one of three categories. First, they could be an individual who's either a serial entrepreneur or brand new, looking to own a business, not work for the boss anymore, similar to how I entered entrepreneurship. They can be mature and experienced. Second group would be a strategic buyer. So we could be selling, say, a pet local chain in Washington State, and maybe PetSmart or some national chain knows that they can scale it. They have a strategic location. An engineering company might get purchased by a larger engineering company, and so forth. And then the third group is a private equity group. Sees typically a higher dollar transaction, something over $2 million in EBITDA or earnings before interest, depreciation, taxes, and amortization. They would come in and fund it. They'd either change it and put it into one of their other investments, or they'd let it, run it independently and just have a substantial presence in there. Typically, we see the majority will be, at the $30 million in sales and below. Will be from 10 million and below will be individuals. Anything up to 30 will fit the other two categories.
I see. How long does it take to find and finalize the sale of a business, Seth?
If it's I'll break this into two groups. Standard mainstream businesses below 10 million, with no regulations, will be 4 to 9 months. If it's a specialized industry like a winery, a liquor control, or a cannabis, that has to get a license approved and part of the process by the state liquor cannabis board, then it could take up to 12 months. Larger transactions, 20 million above, that could take anywhere from 12 to 18 months sometimes.
Wow, that takes a long time to plan that out.
Mm-hmm.
How about the lending process, Addie? Actually, I did look your bank up and get this. Live Oak Bank is currently rated at A+ by the Better Business Bureau as well. And it's got quite a high rating by the business community. A+, you can't beat that. So a credible lender, like you said earlier, with good solid background is important in these transactions, as I understand it. So I suppose my next question is, how long does it take to finalize the lending process for these purchases?
Yeah, thank you, Monique. You caught me off guard with your information because I just love that you came to me with that. I was looking at some information while we were on break. 0.6% net charge-off since the inception of our bank. And I was going to look at the SBA stats and I couldn't quite pull it up quickly, but the A+ rating, I think, speaks for itself. Average closing 42 days on a business acquisition. That's assuming everybody is working in the right direction, well prepared, ready to go. I'd say be prepared for 60 to 90 days. Aim for quicker. We can always move quicker than that. The biggest things, and I listened to the end of the last podcast, life insurance is a hot topic, and something that we recommend and SBA does as well. That if a business is dependent upon one or a few individuals, that we do ask for an assignment of life insurance. And that can take some time to get in place. So there are some key items that can take a while. And so just making sure that everybody's moving in the right direction and communicating through the process just helps to get that closing time frame honed in on. And in line. So
this question is for Seth. Why are businesses coming up for sale? Actually, you mentioned that earlier about sometimes people want to sell because there's a death.
Yeah, I'll go into a little more detail. That's fine. That's all. It's a great question. Similar to houses, there's an 8-year itch, is what I like to call it. Houses typically, on average, will come up for sale in 8 years, and business owners will typically also sell in 8 years. Most of the sales are retirement. Could also be a change in business, maybe that the owner realizes he or she can't scale the business anymore, and it be in better hands with a new owner. Could be also, negative issues. They're losing money, and they just got to get out, and they feel there is some value in salvaging it by selling it. Oftentimes, having partners in businesses can be great. It can help you spread, efforts, bring in extra knowledge, but at the same time, it can be problematic, and you find businesses coming for sale because the partners learn that they can't be friendly to each other to be nice about it.
I see. And how often? So I guess every 8 years, it takes about on average for a business to want to transfer to new hands. Am I right? Mm-hmm. How interesting is that? Do you remember when you were doing valuation for your company, Asteroid, with what was that company that did your due diligence? Remember this?
Keiretsu Forum.
Keiretsu. Now, are you doing something similar as Keiretsu used to do for your Asteroid company?
Yes, just in a different manner, but very similar. That's the type of valuation and the due diligence that they did. They came in and analyzed ours. We do the same type of due diligence, with our companies before we take it to sale. And then once buyers sign the contract, they'll do something similar themselves. the nice part about our process is we've done the lion's share of their work for them. And so it speeds up the process.
I see. How interesting. What advice do you have for buyers of businesses if they were to want to sell for the best value that they can get? How can they prepare the business for such a transaction? For
sellers, for the seller, my advice would be that they keep clean and transparent books. Keep the business running on all engines. Even though you're selling it, don't go to Tahiti and go on vacation and let the business slip. That'll get cold feet to a buyer right before they sign their promise to pay with Addie, right? So we want to make sure that they're willing to keep the gas pedal on. Make sure you have empowered your employees so that they call it key person risk. If you're doing all the work in that company and I go to sell it and then we remove Monique from the company and there's nothing left, that's hard to sell. Right. So make sure you have a transition plan. You've empowered a second person to step into your feet, and that will make the bankers also feel comfortable that the business will be successful on the sale. And then the last one is to have systems in place, not just running on Excel. Excel is not a system. Have processes that are sustainable and back up. You can, look at the results from your vacation on your family because you are going to go on vacation.
So are these things that you want to see on paper, in print, some sort of guarantee or affirmation about the solidity of the business? These are things, do you help with the business prepare to put these together like a pro forma of to present to the buyers?
Exactly.
Okay.
You got it right, 100%. We look for it in our, we're interviewing the seller as much as they're interviewing me to be their broker. It's a partnership. When I work with the sellers, it's an emotional, it's a 9 to 12 months sometimes, right? Like I talked about. So you got to get along with them. You got to make sure it's a business that you can sell, that are sustainable. And these are the same questions and criteria a buyer is gonna be looking for.
I'm going to ask you a little bit about the comparison between the, purchasing and merger and acquisition of the small business versus the bigger one that you always hear about on the Wall Street Journal, for example. Those are like handled by brokerages like, Morgan Stanley, Smith Barney, Goldman Sachs. These are much larger scales, right? Do you know much to compare the small business M&A versus the larger institutions or corporations?
I do. I've worked for large corporations in the past, and I also just completed, since I did give you my profile, a program at Columbia Business School for mergers and acquisitions, which was primarily on large acquisitions. So these will be large takeovers, like LinkedIn being purchased by Microsoft. That's a pretty one that will recognize in Washington State. That will be two CEOs sitting together, coming up with a deal on a back a piece of paper and saying to their team, go for it. Or they'll hire a large company like Morgan Stanley who will bring in their investment bankers and they will come up with different scenarios and identify targets to go after. And then whether it's a hostile takeover or not. The business that I'm in and IBA is in is smaller than that. This is 30 million and below. The others are typically 500 million and above. That
different segments of the market.
Yes, exactly. So smaller transactions. I don't need an army of lawyers, an army of bankers to evaluate it. And banker not being like Addie, but banker being equity and public stock experts.
I see. And Addie, in terms of lending for small business owners, what advice do you have for buyer of business to prepare themselves for purchasing? What kind of things should they line up to present to the bank in order to show financial solidity, I'm not sure if I use the correct word, but financial solvency and solidity at the same time.
Lots of big words and S's in there. I like it. Yeah. You know, equity is a big thing that we talk about. This is cash, cash, cash. The banker, the lender is going to ask the buyers to fill out a personal financial statement, and that lender is going to want to see that cash on a personal financial statement. At least 10% buyer cash to put toward the purchase of a business. With rates where they're at right now, rates are higher. That is decreasing the ability to buy businesses because the rates are higher. And so we're finding that buyers have to come to the table with more cash. And we also want to see that the buyer's not putting everything that they have into the business. And so maybe it's they're putting in 15% or 20% and they still have some cash to fall back on.
Right.
You know, to help cover those bumps in the road that come along, or, you know, if their car breaks down, they have some cash to fall back on.
Right.
And talking about that equity, the SBA is really big about documentation. That means, where does the equity come from? They want to make sure that this equity is purely cash and that it wasn't borrowed from a third or second.
Another bank. Right.
Yes, exactly. And so 60 days of documentation, it's been sitting there in an account. So that's the equity piece. Take a look at your personal credit report. Make sure that there's no blemishes. If there are, research them. You can always make a note, calling the credit reporting agency, Experian, Equifax, TransUnion,
right.
Calling them, making a note, this is an error, and being upfront with your lender as to what the issue was and why. Have your resume ready, have a business plan ready. Let the lender know that you're excited, why you want to do the deal, why you want, you know, why it makes sense. You know, it's an opportunity to let your lender know why you want to do the deal and that it's a partnership. You know, it's a relationship that's going to last for a long time.
Right. How long usually? Is that like a 30-year loan relationship, or is it a 10-year?
Yeah, 10 years, but they're usually paid off within 7 to 8 years.
Okay. How would you compare yourself to a national bank such as Bank of America, or what is another one that tend to lend money around here? I think BFA. Is it Wells Fargo? What about BECU? Is that a competitor? Is that considered somebody that would loan a lot of money to small businesses? Because I know they have that auto loans corner, right?
Yeah, you know, there's always different banks, and it's good to know who are the players in different industries. You know, who's really good at doing mortgages or home equity loans or SBA loans, and even with SBA loans, who's really good at doing business acquisitions. And I would say at Live Oak Bank, that is where we stand out. It's business acquisitions or partner buyouts, where you have an existing business, existing cash flow, a new buyer coming in, or maybe you have two owners that, you know, one of them is getting ready to retire and the other one wants to buy the other out. We do those really well, very quickly, and we have a ton of resources and technology to do it very quick and very well. So that's really where we stand out.
Earlier, when you were talking about all the criteria that you typically look at in consideration in order to approve a loan, it sounds very similar to the home loan lending process. Even, you know, you do seem to take just a little bit longer to vet your borrowers, but the amount of time and the process seem fairly similar to home loan borrowing and purchasing. Am I right?
You know, I would say that it depends. It depends on the transaction. If there's real estate involved in a transaction, that does take a little bit longer. I think it's all about being well prepared and having the right people in your corner. The right attorney, the CPA, the right banker, the broker. I'll tell you that if I'm working with a buyer and they have a business that they'd like to purchase, I do ask, is it being listed through a brokerage? Because if it is, I know that the deal's been vetted. There's no skeletons in the closet that need to be worked out. I had worked on a deal a couple years ago, actually a really interesting deal. It was a service business. I have 3 children, right? I've never experienced this before, but lice can be a big thing. Well, this company literally extracted lice from your hair. And this company was being sold for $3 million. I mean, who would have thought? Well, the seller had started the business and she was I think she was working 10 hours a week and had signed an LOI to sell the business. And the buyer wanted her to work in the business 30 hours a week for, I don't remember what it was. It was at least 2 months. And she was thinking to herself, I've been working 10 hours a day for years. Why would I want to sell the business and then come to work even more?
Right, make no sense.
I thought to myself, this deal really hasn't been vetted by a broker because there was no broker involved. She wasn't mentally prepared for what was to come. So those are kind of just the little things that you learn. And that's why I feel like it's always good to have those right people in your corner to make sure that that you think about those things that can delay the deal.
Just a very quick question, and I'm going to switch over to Seth to the final question for this interview about lending. So what if a person has a certain large amount of cash in the bank, but their growth, they anticipate that, okay, what if I use up all this money that I have? I need to have like a line of credit or something ready to tap into if I run out of this money. But I don't think I'm going to run out of this money, but I'm just cautious. Okay. Can they apply with all that collateral in the bank for a line of credit? What would you let them borrow at? What would be, they have very good credit rating, with the 3 bureaus that you mentioned, Experian and all that. What would you lend them, the line of credit be like?
Great question. So I would think in that scenario, it would be a personal line of credit opposed to a business line of credit, because a lender is going to first ask, what's the repayment source? So how am I going to get repaid? And that's usually from some kind of income coming in, whether it's business income or personal income. And then what's the collateral? Am I really going to secure that cash? Or do I just know that it's there just in case? And so in that scenario, maybe it's a high net worth individual that needs to find the right banker to know that this person has the financial wherewithal to fit within their credit guidelines.
Right, the risk parameter.
Yep, exactly. So in that case, you really need to find the right bank that offers those kinds of line of credit. But I think it would be a personal line of credit that would likely be unsecured to an individual that has financial wherewithal.
Awesome answer. Thank you for that information. I'm sure I actually have been curious about that for a while. Okay, so Seth, I think I asked you how to prepare your seller to sell a business, but I don't think I've asked you how to prepare the buyer to purchase a business. And you do both sides, right? You represent both buyers and sellers in an acquisition, correct?
We will assist buyers through the transaction, and they'll be, like Addie talked about, they will be partnered with a lawyer, a business acquisition lawyer. We like to recommend our buyers work with attorneys who have worked in acquisitions. They don't want to pay to train a lawyer, like paying a taxi driver to learn the streets of New York. That'd be very expensive.
Right.
And we also ask them to meet with a solid, acquisition SBA lender, right? So we refer them, to them as well. And a CPA who can help with their due diligence. We talk to them and make sure that they have the financial wherewithal. We get our personal financial statement to help prepare them to meet with the banker so that we first understand, can they complete the transaction? And if they can, then we proceed to talk with them. We also have them sign a non-disclosure agreement for confidentiality, which is utmost importance. And we interview them and talk to make sure that they have the components to be successful running the business. SBA typically will not, underwrite a deal to someone who's brand new to, say, an engineering company, right? They need to have some relevant experience typically. Not in all cases, but in typical cases. So we will make sure that they're going to be a good fit and they have the right personality. And we will make sure that they have their financials in order.
Well, we are running out of time. Now we have to wrap it up in 30 seconds. Is there any last word that you would like to share? And, actually, you are the one before the last episode of this year that I'm going to do with Roger Flygear from the Federal Way Public Market, creating the heart and soul of Federal Way next week. So you were going to be our season finale until he popped up. But any famous last word for our audience who may be looking at buying or selling or borrowing money to buy and sell businesses? Seth, just
the robust market, a lot of great opportunities. Truly appreciate being here today. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. How about you, Addie?
Please email me if you would like a update on current economic trends based on third quarter as it relates to M&A activity.
And what is your email address?
You can find it at liveoakbank.com.
Okay. And if
Seth
you want
at ibainc.com.
Okay. Now, if you guys want to add those on the comments so that, in case they want to have a visual of that, you certainly can add it on the Facebook on Afternoons with Monique page. And anyone want to reach out to Seth Rudin or Addie Roberg can, Robert, from Live Oak Bank can reach out to them by that way. We're out of time. Thank you so much for joining me on Afternoons with Monique. With you on Rainier Avenue Radio, signing off.